Okay, good morning everyone. Let's break through lines 290 to I think about line 316 of Aeneid 6. When we were last speaking we were dealing with, I think, the Gorgons and the Harpies and the Chimera. Make sure you know who all of those people are. Here, suddenly, Corripuit hic, so here, Trepidus. Here, Aeneas is the subject here. So here, hic Aeneas, Trepidus, frightened with a formidne subita, with a sudden sort of trembling, with a sudden terror. Aeneas grasps, corripit, look for the emphatic position there. Aeneas grasps his, find your object, corripit, emphatic position, ferrum, grasps his sword, and he's trembling with a sudden formidine, with a sudden fear. Aeneas grasps, here Aeneas, trembling with sudden fear, grasps his sword, and he offert, and he, what do we want to say? He offers the drawn blade, I suppose you could say, and he he turns the naked blade venientibus against them approaching, towards them approaching. Et ni, and if his docta comes, and if his wise companion, she's wise because later on we hear that Hecate has already told her about all of the different, has told the Sibyl about all of the different sort of spirits inhabiting the underworld, and if his wise companion didn't, and now look for all of this, I suppose, how would you call it, shapelessness, I suppose, of these spirits, the formlessness, the shapelessness. There's lots of contradictions in this passage, because here we're told they're sine corpore, here, without body, and yet later on we're going to be told about how Charon the ferryman actually brings their corpora, brings their bodies across. And I like that. Now you could look at that and go, well, that's a mistake, but I think that's unlikely, and certainly in terms of us and our approach towards Virgil, then let's have enough respect for him to think that it's not a mistake, that actually that contradiction is intentional, that it's intentionally contradictory and confused, because that's what the underworld is like. And if his wise companion didn't admoniat, didn't warn him, if his wise companion did not warn him that these so if the wise companion did not admoniat, warn him that these were tenuis, that these were faint, that these were tenuis, that these were light, these were faint, vitas, lives, sine corpore, without body, that these were faint lives without body, flying volitare, that forms that fly under a hollow form. So formae, forms that volitare, that fly, forms flying sub, under a cava imagine, under a hollow form. He would have rushed upon them. Great use here of the subjunctive. You might be thinking here that this is conditional and that it should be contrary to fact, shouldn't it? However, we've got I suppose the fact that it's actually future. What have we got here? Future less vivid, with the present subjunctive, makes it really touch and go as to whether or not he's actually going to attack them. He would have rushed upon them, and frustra in vain would have deweberebet, would have slashed at the umbras, at the shadows, with his sword, with his ferro. Hinc via tartare. Next bit. From here, a road which leads to the waters, ad undas, to the waters of the Tartarean Acheron, the river here. Hic, here, the, what do we want to say? Filled with, so hic, here, turbidus, swollen with, but here, filled with, with mire, I suppose you could say, and with wasta, and with massive flood, a whirlpool, gurges, festers, and eructat, and throws up into the cocytus all of its omnem harenam, all of its sand. That's sort of reminding us perhaps of the Charybdis whirlpool in the Odyssey. So, next bit, portator. I've got to be relatively fast so we can get this all in the one YouTube thing. Portator. The ferryman, a grim ferryman, a horrendas portator, the grim ferryman, servat, guards has aquas, these waters and rivers, hendardes there, aquas et flumina, with his ablative of quality, in his terrible squalor, Charon, this grim view of the ferryman of the dead, the grim, it's sort of in some ways he's sort of desperately poor, grim human, in other ways he's incredibly demonic, terrible in his squalor. Charon, that's his name, on the chin of whom, on the mentor qui, literally for whom the chin, on the chin of whom, the possessive dative, a mass plurima, I'm going to say rather than very much, the superlative, a mass of inculta, of unkempt canitiers, of unkempt hair lies. So, on whose chin there lies a mass of unkempt hair. His eyes, I like the translation at the back of your notes, his, sort of his eyes stand out on flame, with flame. Sordidus, a grim, amictus, a grim cloak hangs down from his shoulders in a knot. Apparently that shows how grim he is, because a normal person would have had it sort of tied up would have had his cloak tied up with a brooch of some sort, whereas he has it just done in a in a knot. Ipse, he himself, ipse, subigit, we want to say guides the raft with a conto, with his pole, and tends to the velis and tends to the sails. And he carries the corpora, the bodies, this is that word I was alluding to earlier on, and he carries the bodies in his murky boat, in his ferroginea, great word, in his murky boat. Jam senior, now he's old, but senectus, but old age for a god, is tough, is cruda and viridis, is tough and green, like that as well. This hardiness, this toughness of the ferryman of the dead of Charon. Hook, to hear, now this is all filled with pathos, to hear, omnis turba, to hear, all the crowd rushes, so all the crowd, ruebat, rushes to hear, rushes here, effusa, streaming towards, pouring out towards the banks, matres, mothers, and men, matres atque viri, mothers and men, and the corpora again, is it? Mothers and men, I'm sorry, yes, and the corpora, and the bodies of great-hearted heroes, now defuncta, with their life spent. Pueri, boys and unmarried girls, and impositique, and sons placed upon the pyre, and juvenes impositi, placed upon the pyre in front of the faces of their parents, their fathers. Look for that pathos, filled with it, youth, greatness, all of this sort of idea. I suppose it's quite Stoic here, isn't it? It's sort of the idea that actually, in the double simile we're about to come to see as well, it's the same sort of point, that actually all of us die, that there are so many of us, that the great, the little, the rich, the poor, men, women, young and old, that we all die, the sort of, yes, the totalness, I suppose. Anyway, quam multa, let's get the first of the double similes. As many, or as thick as the folia, quam, as the leaves, as many as the leaves, lapsa, as many as the leaves in the forests, in the frigore primo, in the first chill of autumn, lapsa, that slip and fall out. Or as many as the birds that glomerantur, or as many as thick as the birds that from the gurgite, that from the deep mass, glomerantur, from the deep mass, gather towards the land. Ubi frigidus annus, when the cold year, when the cold time of year drives them, fugat, routes them across the sea, and imitit, and sends them towards terris apricis, and sends them towards sunny lands, apricis terris. Starbant, emphatic position, they stand begging to be primi, to be first, begging to cross the course first. and so starband, they were standing on antes present participle, begging transmittere to cross the gap first. I don't think gap is very good, but to cross the area first, and they tende bandque, and they stretch out their hands in amore, filled with pathos here. You don't expect to see the word amor, love, in longing is better here, in longing for the shore on the other side, for the further shore, in longing amore, navita. But the tristis, but the grumpy cannot be, silly Simon, cannot be the right word to describe the ferryman here, but the grim, that's better rather than grumpy. It sounds like I'm talking about dwarves, but the grim ferryman, nunc, now takes on, hosts these, nunc illos, now those. I like the randomness, adding to the pathos, and form of at, but he, arcet, pushes away, I suppose with his pole, at a distance, sumotos, those moved away from but he drives off from a distance, those pushed away from the others, pushed away from the harena, pushed away from the shore. Well done, everyone. That was a long 26 lines. Hope it's vaguely useful to you. I'll see you all next lesson.